At the edge of our town, there's a shitty gas station that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you were to go inside, you'd see row after row of off-brand chips, cookies, potted meats, and pickled curiosities. Expiration dates suspiciously missing from the canned goods like they were filed off years ago in some misguided attempt to control inventory turnover. A faded, wet floor sign from way back covers a large crack in the foundation by the cooler where layers of sticky spill-off have formed a miniature tar pit, preserving countless insect corpses and the occasional small rodent.
Hello everyone, welcome to my Tales from the Gas Station video. I know I'm a bit late to the discussion, but I really wanted to wait for a physical release of Volume 3 before I really started talking about it, seeing as I already had the other two volumes under my belt. I won't be going over the blogs as much since it's not necessary to read the books, although it does make the experience a hell of a lot better, and if you want to hear my opinions about that, then... well, I would say watch my previous videos about Tales for that, but they're kind of garbage, so... just watch the non-spoiler section of those videos and you should be good. Volume 1 does a pretty good job of adapting the first arc in Tales, while also introducing new readers into the series. It's pretty evenly split between new content and also things we've seen before, but even those have been changed quite a bit. It introduces new plot points and characters that are book exclusive, and has the best structure out of all three books, but it kind of loses momentum near the end. Which is kind of a trend between these books, honestly. Volume 1 is really solid and it does a good job laying the foundation for the books. Volume 2. Volume 2 is insane, man. This book is mostly new content, so there are a lot of subplots going on, and some of them are just fucking crazy. A lot of things just sorta happen to the characters with no real build-up, and it feels super fast-paced all the time. But as frantic as this book is, it has a lot of thrilling moments. This book also suffers from being the middle child in the family, and by that I mean there are a lot of questions that aren't answered, and there are a lot of new plot points and questions that are brought up just to sort of set up for future books. And it makes Volume 2 feel really disconnected in that regard. This is also where Jack's writing becomes really good and funny, because he really starts to tap into all forms of surreal comedy. Unfortunately, Volume 2 is also the most forgettable in the series. Now, it could just be because everything goes 100 miles per hour, so it all feels like one giant blur, but still. However, this book is still good, all things considered. The main event. Volume 3 certainly is the best written book, and the funniest out of the entire series. But it suffers the exact opposite problem that Volume 2 did. This book drags so much. I'm not sure if Volume 3 is the longest in the series, but it certainly feels like it. It doesn't help that there's significantly less original content here than the other two volumes, and it's a really slower paced book, which is okay. It has other things going for it. Analyzing these books individually isn't really necessary, since they're all really good, and even though they're different, they all work as one giant story, so it's really just a matter of your personal preference at the end of the day. Now I'm going to move on to spoilers for this next part, so consider yourselves warned. The Tales from the Gas Station book series honestly impresses me with how it was able to adapt all the stories, and I cannot stress enough just how solid Volume 1 is. Because, let's be honest, Tales isn't really a story that inherently transitions well to a book, but Volume 1 is so well written that it makes the transition as best as it possibly can. The Fortune Teller was a great way to give the book series direction, and the people trying to rob the gas station was a good introduction to this world and Jack's experience in this job. All the structural issues that were present throughout all the books were kind of unavoidable. I mean shit, just look at the endings. In Volume 1, when Tony became evil, it seems really tacked on after the climax that was meeting the Dark God, but shit, what else could they have done? He couldn't have put it in Volume 2 because they wouldn't have fit anywhere. And Volume 2, as hectic and as all over the place as it was, it did have the most responsibility with addressing everything that happened in Volume 1, doing the Christmas storyline, and setting up the colossus that was the invasion arc. And the book abruptly ends because it didn't really have time to establish an actual plot. Although, because Volume 2 isn't bogged down with continuity, Jack is able to go wild with the story, and I will attest that Volume 2 has some of the best moments in the entire series. The chase that happens between Jerry, Jack, and the two clown juggernauts, that was an amazing action scene. Tales isn't really a story that's known for its action, but that chase, I mean, that was awesome, man. Meeting Rosa for the first time was a lot funnier than I thought it would be, and when the lynch mob tried to kill Jerry because they thought he killed Vanessa, That was probably the most I've ever seen Jerry emote. And that and when he was at Vanessa's funeral, which it's kind of weird that we never saw Jamie in that, but whatever. It's nice seeing Jack progressively get over Tony's death. And there was something sort of oddly beautiful about Sabine and how normal his relationship was to her. And it makes sense why he fell for her, because she was probably the most normal thing in his bizarre and horrifying life.
Also, apparently Sabine and Spencer might have known each other. No idea what that's about.
One of my many regrets that I've had with my original Tales from the Gas Station videos is that I didn't really talk about Spencer Middleton that much. And it's a problem I wanted to rectify, except for the fact that Spencer Middleton is barely in this book. He shows up, I think, like 3 or 4 times in the entire book, and 2 of those times are hallucinations. But yeah, Spencer. He's one of those characters that I get excited and terrified whenever he shows up, and he's the perfect rival for Jack.
Spencer.
ほう、向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。せっかく祖父の
Benjamin.
が私の座
Gas station.
正体を試験終了チャイム直前まで問題を解いている受験生のような必死こいた気分で教えてくれたというのに近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんだな。ほほう。では十分近づくがよい。
I'm not sure how I feel about Jack being the one to kill Spencer in the Dark God arc, because while it is ridiculous and kind of cool to think about, it takes away from my boy Benjamin's one shining moment. It made me realize Benjamin doesn't really accomplish anything in the series. At least the original doesn't. Yeah, let's talk about that. I'm also really split on the decision to sort of bring Benjamin back.
Huzzah!
Because on one hand, it does feel cheap to sort of kill him off and then bring him back. On the other hand, if you're going to subvert expectations, you kind of have to replace it with something, preferably something good. And the idea of a rogue mimic is kind of interesting.
But this raises so many questions!
Shut up, Benjamin is back! I think the blog is going down the route of posting one-offs and filler stories that aren't necessarily related to the books or main story, but maybe expanded on in the novels. And just a place where Jack can post updates and other fun things. Oh yeah, Tony's back, I guess. I mean, he used the same dialogue as him, so...
You army? This time I was surprised. No, obviously not. I knew a guy. He was a ranger in the army. You remind me of him. Really? The guy shook his head and said, no, not really.
This is where things start to get a little bit hazy for me, because I know Volume 3 is retconning some things, and I think the explanation for it are these things called glitches in the Matrix, which are in the book. I think that's the explanation, though. And maybe the reason why Death at the Gas Station doesn't happen is because it's another glitch in the Matrix. Or maybe those two things are unrelated. Volume 3 has a lot of interesting ideas when it comes to continuity, which is ironic since Brother Riley is a reality manipulator. It's also the reason why I think Volume 3 drags so damn much, because not only are they adapting the Doppelganger arc, which is by far the longest arc in Tales, and also doing Hanging Upside Down and parts of Death at the Gas Station, which are both stories where nothing really happens. They're also doing these glitches in the Matrix, and they establish it by having events repeat themselves over and over again. Volume 3 just got really unlucky with what it had to do. Speaking of what it had to do, poor Rosa! I mean, she gets kicked around so damn much in this book, and at first it was kind of funny, but it just sort of got mean-spirited after a while. And then it just never gets any better. It turns out that she's a vessel for the Dark God, and in order to save the world, they have to stab her in the chest. Because of course, let's just keep shitting on Rosa's day. She gets possessed by the Dark God, and I mean, it's kind of cool to see him back. Also, this might be a minor thing, but there's this one point in the book where Jack stalks Rosa to see if she's a mimic.
I turned on the car, backed up, and slowly followed from a distance. What is she doing? When I saw the answer, my heart sank. She was leaning against the side of the restaurant, smoking a cigarette. Which means absolutely nothing. Why is that a big deal?
Okay, so I want to talk about Volume 3's ending, but before that, there's just other things I want to talk about first. Travis was kind of a meh character in the second book, but in Volume 3, he really shines here. He challenges Jerry as, like, funniest character in the book. Too bad he had to die. The agents Brick and Roscoe are back. Yay! Okay, to be fair, they are kind of funny in this book. I mean, they're still pieces of shit, to be honest, but at least they're using their powers for good.
Great, I thought. It's everyone's least favorite characters back to ruin another day. The agent Brick Roscoe standing on the car put away his badge and muttered a quick, "What the fuck ever?" Jack, you're my hero.
I also really like the scene because it showed Jack being smart, which doesn't really happen as often as it should in these books. Volume 3 also had the best cold opening out of all of the books. Whenever Jack talks to normal people around his age, it's always great. And I gotta admit, when the owners were telling Jack to take the day off for Valentine's Day, it was a pretty nice moment.
What I liked about it is how it gives a really humane insight to these otherwise enigmatic people. I especially like Pops' word to Jack. You've got a whole life ahead of you, and it may be short, and it may be ugly, but it ain't right to let that perfectly good future go to waste when some ain't even got that. Whatever negative feelings they may have harbored towards Jack, or maybe even still harbor, they're able to look past that because they know it won't bring Sabine back. And the fact that they're able to see Jack for what he truly is and feel a genuine sense of empathy towards him and his situation, despite his involvement with Sabine's coma, shows an immense amount of compassion that they have. Or maybe they're just insane, who knows.
The ending of Volume 3 is fucking batshit. Turns out Jack was right about everything and he plans to burn down the gas station. Then Brother Riley confronts him, disguised as a shrink, which raises a million questions. He reveals that Jack doesn't have fatal familial insomnia, he only thinks he does, and because he does, he's immune to people making him fall asleep, even after this conversation for some reason. The cops come, Jack convinces O'Brien to actually take action, because I guess she figured something out with Eric Rugen. They get saved by a Benjamin clone who discovered who the Collector was, what he was planning, and how to stop him. They resurrect the Dark God, who just annihilates everything. They find the Collector's collection, and they find Dr. Howard, who I think is Jerry's brother, or I think that's what's implied, kind of, and he's really humble for some reason. They find the Shapeshifter who can magically fix everything, but they need a human sacrifice. And then O'Brien gets weirdly sentimental for some reason, and then she offers herself, but then before any of that happens, Brother Riley knocks everyone out, except Jack, and then Jack stabs himself with the dagger, which will make the Shapeshifter go into his body, and then it somehow fixes everything, and holy shit. And then everything is great. Benjamin becomes a part of the gas station crew, O'Brien becomes chief of police, Jerry and Jack live together, Rosa kind of gets a happy ending, and everybody's memory of the situation was wiped and the Collector dies. This ending is perfect. Like, I honestly almost want this to be the end of the series, almost. Now I know that things aren't completely perfect, and by the end of the book, some people's memories are getting undone by the event, but still, this ending is everything I've always wanted, which is why I'm so skeptical of it. I mean, shit, dude. Like, after an ending like that, you know Volume 4 shit's gonna go down. And you better believe that when that happens, I'll be right there to see it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching my video. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.